What drives a man to murder his own family? This chilling tale begins in Westfield, New Jersey in 1971, where John List lived in a grand mansion with his wife, Helen, their 3 children, Patricia, Frederick, and John Jr., and his elderly mother, Alma. At first glance, the List family seemed like the perfect picture of suburban life. They attended church regularly, held family dinners, and maintained an image of normalcy. But behind the closed doors of their home, a darkness loomed. John List was a World War II veteran and worked as an accountant, yet as the years went by, his financial situation began to deteriorate. The lavish mansion, which should have been a symbol of success, became a burden. John struggled to pay the mortgage and faced mounting medical expenses for his ailing wife, Helen, who suffered from health issues. The stress of their situation weighed heavily on him. He felt trapped, unable to provide for his family, and increasingly isolated from the world around him. The pressure to maintain appearances consumed him, leading to despair. In his mind, John began to believe that he faced 2 grim choices: go on welfare and subject his family to a life of poverty, or take the most drastic measure imaginable, send them to heaven. As the financial strain grew, John's thoughts twisted and his sense of reality faded. He developed a haunting rationale that he could protect his family from a painful future. On the morning of November 9th, 1971, John List made the harrowing decision to murder his family. It was a cold and quiet day, the kind that would turn a home into a crime scene. He started with his wife, Helen, shooting her in the head as she prepared breakfast. Next, he turned to his mother, Alma, who was visiting at the time. She too fell victim to his gun. With chilling efficiency, John then moved on to his children. He shot Patricia, who was just 16, in her bedroom. Frederick, only 13, was next. Finally, he murdered his youngest son, John Jr., aged 15, who had just come home from school. After carrying out these unspeakable acts, John List did not flee immediately. Instead, he methodically cleaned the crime scene. He placed the bodies in sleeping bags and left them in the family's ballroom. Then, he vanished into the night, leaving behind a macabre scene that would not be discovered for weeks. It wasn't until December 7th, 1971, that the grim reality of the List family's fate began to unfold. A concerned neighbor, noticing the family's prolonged absence, alerted the authorities. Police arrived at the mansion, and upon entering, they were met with a horrific sight: 5 lifeless bodies, the remnants of a family torn apart by one man's desperate actions. The community was shaken to its core. How could a man commit such an atrocity against those he claimed to love? As news of the crime spread, John List became a fugitive. He assumed a new identity and fled to Colorado, where he found work and eventually remarried. For 18 long years, he lived under the radar, evading capture while the search for him continued. He assumed the name Robert Peter and built a new life, distancing himself from his past. Yet, deep down, the haunting memories of his actions lingered. In 1989, a twist of fate brought John List back into the spotlight. The television show America's Most Wanted aired an episode featuring the cold case of the List family murders. Viewers were shocked as they learned about the brutal killings and the man who had escaped justice. One viewer, who happened to recognize List, contacted the authorities. This tip would ultimately lead to his capture. On June 1st, 1989, John List was finally arrested in Virginia after being on the run for nearly 2 decades. The police were astounded that a man who had committed such heinous acts could live among them without being recognized. The long-awaited capture brought some closure to a case that had haunted law enforcement and the community for years. During his trial, John List's defense relied on his mental state at the time of the murders. A psychiatrist testified that List saw his actions as a misguided attempt to save his family from suffering. However, many were left questioning his sanity, especially given the premeditated nature of the crime. In his mind, List had rationalized that he was offering his family a release from their troubles, but the reality of his actions was unforgivable. Ultimately, the jury found List guilty of 5 counts of murder. He was sentenced to 5 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. As he sat in prison, the truth about his financial situation began to surface. Investigators discovered that the very mansion which had burdened him with debt contained a hidden treasure, a stunning Tiffany skylight worth a small fortune. It turned out that List had overlooked this valuable asset while obsessing over his financial woes. This revelation raised haunting questions. Did John List know about the skylight's worth? Was his desperation truly justified, or was it simply a cover for a darker, more sinister motive? As his trial unfolded, the public's fascination with List grew. The case sparked debates about mental health, the pressures of societal expectations, and the extremes to which a person might go when cornered by despair. John List died in prison on March 21, 2008, having spent nearly 2 decades behind bars for his horrific crimes. His story remains a chilling reminder of how despair can lead to devastating choices. In a quest to escape the consequences of his actions, he not only destroyed the lives of his family, but also created a legacy of pain that would resonate through generations. The List family murders serve as a stark reminder of the hidden struggles many face behind closed doors. The tragic events surrounding John List continue to evoke a sense of horror and disbelief. How could a father commit such an unspeakable act? How could a man who once loved his family become a monster? These questions linger, leaving us to ponder the depths of human despair and the consequences of our choices. Join us next time on Crime Scene as we delve into another true crime story that will leave you questioning the nature of humanity. Until then, stay safe and stay curious.